Hello again, my friends. My name is Betsy. Today I'm going to be sharing with you this wonderful drawing that I'm actually really proud of. I am using a type of drawing that I've just been working on recently. Some of you may have seen my recent video where I showed you how I quote unquote made my own art style, which I think most of you know what I mean when I say that. I have been drawing and doodling in this kind of way that I like to call it mezzopunk. And so today's drawing is going to be all about that, and I'm going to continue using some of those same elements and designs. And just as a brief overview, what this consists of is quite a few sort of geometric designs, and you can see here there's some circles and semicircles and arcs. And essentially I'm just going to be playing around with that today. I'm not going to describe everything, as I am sure that if you are watching this, you are an artistic person and you are fairly capable of observing what I'm doing and kind of making your own deductions. However, if you do have any questions, or you're curious about any part of this, I will definitely answer any questions that you have. If you want to put that in the comments for me, I will take care of that. It's absolutely fine. In the meantime, if you're curious about the supplies that I'm using, the types of pens, also those are linked in the description of the video. Also, as I'm sure you can see, this footage is in time-lapse. I just really needed to speed it up, since the entire process for this took more than, 2.5 hours. It was a bit. And so I know that some of you don't like the time lapse, but of course you know that you can always slow it down in the settings of the video. So go ahead and do that if you'd like to see more of the detail. In the meantime, I think it might be a good idea to have a little bit of a chat about boredom. Yeah, boredom. It seems a little contrary to what we're doing here, since I kind of show you guys how to draw and keep yourself busy, keep your hands busy, you know, in order to kind of keep your mind healthy and strong. And even though that's why I do it as well, I feel like I just have to keep my hands busy. But the truth is that I'm not actually fighting off boredom, I'm actually inviting it. And I think I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about my experiences working as a teacher, both in college settings and also in public school settings, to kind of explain more to you what kind of boredom it is that I'm referring to. So for the very good part of the last couple of decades, I have worked as an educator and a teacher in all sorts of different places. Like I said, I have worked in middle schools, in elementary schools, I've worked in high schools, I've worked at community colleges, and I've worked at the university where I got my bachelor's degree, doing all sorts of types of tutoring and kind of just helping out other students. It's almost like I couldn't help it, you know, it was always my style to really try to be a helpful person. And some of what I noticed in people's learning styles, I ended up really understanding that it came down to something that they just weren't able to do mentally. And I felt like it all tied back to their inability to allow their mind to kind of just be calm and wonder. And so I think it might be best if I give you a couple of examples about this. And maybe the easiest ones to understand will be the ones relating to younger children. So let's say kind of elementary school age, or maybe even middle school. And if you have kids, or you've had kids, of course, then you can probably relate to this. Of course, especially now that we have so many distractions, and we know what they all are, right? For a long time it's been television, and now we have our cell phones, we have social media. Even those of us who are adults, who have been around even longer, it's hard for us to stay away from our phones, to try to live our lives in the moment. And so imagine how difficult it is for children right now. Of course, if you have kids, you know, you've seen them always glued to their devices. It takes quite a bit of effort to try to keep most of us off of our devices, because they're just so good at getting our attention. Now, even without devices, we all know that for kids it's fairly difficult for them to pay attention half of the time. There are some children who are better at this and some are worse at this, and that's absolutely normal. There's a range of attention spans among children. However, as we grow up, it starts to become a little bit more clear which of us have a harder time with this than the rest of us, especially those of us who have a hard time staying away from our phones right now, even in our adult life. And one thing that I noticed in the time that I did work with students was that there was a certain subgroup of students, like I said, and they weren't always children. Sometimes I was working with adult students. That the students who had a hard time paying attention, the ones who just couldn't lend me their ear, who couldn't quite absorb the information, these were also students who tended to have a hard time focusing, students who were always trying to distract themselves, who always were trying to find something new and exciting to grasp their attention. And of course, I was only able to observe some of these things through long-term interactions with them, including some of the adult students that I worked with in a college setting. And even they would admit to me that maybe they had ADHD or something like that. But some students who didn't have ADHD also were suffering from some of these same things. They couldn't sit long enough and pay attention to what was being taught to them. They didn't have the attention span. They didn't have the ability to really pay attention. And what I've learned over the years is that these students who had a hard time with this, I noticed that they really didn't have a willingness or maybe even an ability to sit and just be bored with their thoughts. They always wanted input. They always wanted something to be going on. And I've known quite a few people who were like this, who always needed to be reading something, needed to be watching something, there had to always be something going on for them to be engaged. They always wanted engagement, always wanted to be watching or listening to something. And like I said, that's perfectly natural. We all want to be engaging with something. It's fun, it's exciting, it keeps you busy. But also there are some benefits to just being bored, to just turning everything off, to just being somewhere quiet, to just being by yourself, and just allowing that emptiness to fill you and to kind of teach you a little bit something about your mind. And so there were often times with my students where I would just make sure that there was a nice quiet environment. And for some of them, it was really difficult. It was difficult for them to grasp the thought of nice, calm, quiet, calm, peaceful. I said calm twice, didn't I? That's how important it is. And in all of those age ranges, it's almost painful for certain people to experience that quiet, to experience this, what should I call it? I want to call it like this low sensory experience, where there isn't a bunch of noise, there isn't a bunch of stuff going on, there aren't people moving around everywhere, everything is just slow and, as the kids call it, boring. And in that state, when you allow yourself to be a little bit empty of things, and I'm not saying to completely empty yourself out in a kind of unnatural way, I just mean just less things impacting you. When you allow that to happen, you can actually give your mind a moment to start synthesizing. And if you don't come from a educational kind of background like I do, maybe synthesizing could mean something else for you. But for us, it comes down to your ability to put together new ideas using old ones. And that's what synthesizing means, at least in an educational setting. And so whenever I had students, I would notice that, let's say I would give them some kind of problem or something to solve, something to think about. Especially with the students that I worked with most recently, just a couple of years ago, I noticed that they just had such a hard time taking information that was given to them, sometimes even fairly easy information, and they just did not want to do anything with it. I'll tell them, figure it out. See if you can solve the puzzle. They just said, no. I wasn't solving it for them. I wasn't giving them the way to do it. And that made it really hard for them. They just figured it's not worth it. I'm not going to try. But the students who were better at managing their boredom, essentially, the students who weren't always plugged in, who weren't always watching something or playing something, the students who knew how to sit and just think about things, I noticed they were much better at actually attempting to tackle novel situations, I suppose. They were the ones who actually would stop and wonder, yeah, how do I solve this? Can I do something about this? And of course, in a classroom setting, it's a little bit odd. We present people with problems that maybe aren't so natural. Everybody makes fun of the whole idea about some girl having 20 watermelons and 6 apples, and if she gives some of them away, it's just silly. Why would someone have 20 watermelons? And so the children always look at teachers like they're weird, and why are you making me do this? It doesn't make any sense. So I'm sure that adds to the problem. But once we're adults and there isn't any of that getting in the way, there's no excuse anymore. We start to recognize that we're always looking for some kind of input, aren't we? We're always looking for something to keep our mind busy. I know I am sometimes. At least when I'm not paying attention, I'm just always looking through something on my phone until a few minutes later, sometimes even longer, half an hour later, I realize, what am I doing? What am I looking for? What am I trying to do right now? And so for me, and this may be the same case for you as well, I instead turn it off. I put my phone away. I put it in another room sometimes even. I want it to just go get charged up, and I need it to be away from me. And I will sit at my desk and I just look around. And there are occasions when I give myself permission to just sit there and do nothing. Maybe 10 minutes, that's all it takes. Just a few minutes. And it can be awkward. If you've never done this, if you've never just given yourself a chance to sit and do nothing, it can feel a little odd. It really can. To just experience what your mind is doing. Just give it a moment. Just let your thoughts go wherever they're going to go. They could be positive thoughts. They could be negative thoughts. They could be maybe thoughts that look like they're or feel like they're kind of useless or pointless. You could just let your mind wander. And if you give yourself a chance to do that, at first it'll be a little odd, but then you'll start noticing, wow, I have a lot of thoughts, don't I? I have a lot of ideas, don't I? And if you allow yourself to do that, maybe on the first day, maybe nothing will happen. You'll just sit there, and maybe you'll move a few papers around on your desk, and that's it. Try it again another day. Give yourself 10 minutes to do nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then you'll start thinking, well, I'm already here. I'm already here. Maybe I'll grab a piece of paper. I'm already here. Maybe I'll go grab a pencil. I'm already here. Maybe I'll tidy up my desk. Something might happen. Give yourself the opportunity, a few more days, a few more times, until you just kind of make a habit out of it. You don't even have to draw. You don't even have to do anything. But if you do, just sit in the quiet. Just sit without your phone. Sit without your TV. Just sit a few minutes. Just try it. And I know that some of you listening are my age. Some of you may be younger, some older. And you already know about this, but some people don't know. I have had quite a few people in my family far older than me who still were constantly glued to their TV. Still, a lot of people in my family, some people that I know are older, and their TV is always on. Their phone is always on. So this really isn't an age thing. It's an everybody thing. I have come across some studies, scientific studies showing that people hate boredom. That the idea of having to sit with their own thoughts, even for 10 or 15 minutes, with no input, with no phone, with no TV, with no noise, is debilitatingly uncomfortable for some people. And that when given the option, This part is the part that I couldn't believe. When given the option between being bored, actually bored and doing nothing, between the boredom and their mind just wandering, and the option to zap themselves with electricity, quite a few people chose to zap themselves with electricity because they did not want to be bored. And I always knew, as an educator, as a teacher, I always knew that boredom was difficult for a lot of people. But oh wow, I had no idea just how bad it was. That was what perfectly normal adults, by the way, this study did not involve children. Perfectly willing adults were explained. They were told, you are going to sit here for a little while in the quiet. We just want to see what happens. And also, here's a button. Just know that if you touch it, it will zap you. Here you go. And yeah, so many people zapped themselves. Only a few people made it to the end in the quiet. And many of them did, when asked why they did it, they were pretty honest, and they said they just did not like the idea of having to sit alone with their own thoughts. It's like we're children, isn't it? Like we're in that constant state of flux and that constant state of need that even as adults, so many of us just are not willing and not capable of sitting in silence and just allowing ourselves to become one with our own thoughts. And so when I share these drawings, I hope that you all notice that what I'm trying to do is share with you some of the things that I do while I draw. Drawing isn't just about drawing for me. It's not just about making lines on paper. It's not just about trying to impress you with my skills as an artist. It's not. What I'm trying to share with you here is also some of this background stuff that goes on, some of these meditative practices, some of these kind of ideas and ideals that might be able to help you more than simply drawing. Because I think if I just showed you how to draw, you might quit. You might find someday that you just don't have time for it. But maybe, just maybe, if you learn the reasons why a practice like drawing or sketching or doodling is so good for you, then maybe you can stick to it just a little bit longer and actually find better benefits out of it. You can benefit more out of it. So here we go. This is the end of this drawing. I hope that you liked it. Like I said, I was actually really proud of how it came out. And again, I hope that you learn to invite a little bit of boredom into your life, to sit with your own thoughts, to sit with your own ideas, and just give them a chance to kind of change you and mold you. And when you do decide to come here and watch me draw for a few minutes, here it is. I'm very happy to be here for you and to share my drawings with you. I hope that you have an excellent day. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.